Hello, my friends. Let's find out what happens in Chapter 13 of Mr. Penguin and the Lost Treasure. Chapter 13, Dangling Above Certain Death. Mr. Penguin felt his tummy lurch with the topsy-turvy, wobbly jelly feeling of flying through the air as he hurtled toward the sharp rocks in the lagoon below. Then suddenly it all stopped. Instead of falling, Mr. Penguin now found himself dangling. He looked up. By some wonderful stroke of luck, the strap of his satchel had tangled around a branch that jutted out through the waterfall. As Mr. Penguin gripped his satchel with his flippers, he saw Colin come tumbling toward him. "Quick, Colin!" shouted Mr. Penguin over the noise of the rushing water. "Grab on to me!" Colin didn't need to hear that twice. He fired out a rope of webbing and lassoed Mr. Penguin's belly. Then he swung toward his friend and clambered up and over his beak, onto the satchel and onto the branch. He was safe. Miss Bones came flying past next, throwing her arms out and catching Mr. Penguin's feet. She dangled, huffing and puffing and holding on with all her might. Montague quickly followed, at first gripping onto his sister's ample waist before slipping down to her ankles. Above their heads, the strap of Mr. Penguin's satchel groaned. Finally, the alligator flew over their heads and splashed into the churning waters below. Everyone looked down and gasped. The beast disappeared for a moment before its head burst through the water. It blinked for a second, then gnashed its jaws again. Mr. Penguin gulped. From the shadowy depths, even more alligators appeared, circling around and grinding their teeth. Mr. Penguin looked up at the satchel and the branch. What was he going to do? Miss Bones and her brother were really heavy, and he wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. The seams of his satchel were slowly pinging apart, and he could feel the ancient branch above them starting to move. "Hurry and do something, Mr. Penguin," squealed Miss Bones from somewhere around his ankles. "We're going to be eaten by those monsters." Mr. Penguin gritted his beak and tried to twist his flippers around his satchel strap to haul himself upward. But it was useless. The branch above him began to creak and groan. On the branch, Colin whipped out his notepad and wrote, "Gasp!" Mr. Penguin squeezed his eyes shut and prepared to be gobbled up by the creatures below. And that is the end of Chapter 13. We'll have to find out what happens in Chapter 14 tomorrow.